Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, feeling like someone was watching you? The room is silent. The air is still, but there's a strange feeling crawling up your spine. You try to ignore it, telling yourself it's just your imagination, until you hear a whisper that doesn't belong to you. In today's video, we bring you a thrilling horror story that will send shivers down your spine. But this is not just any story. This is a chance for you to improve your English. As you listen, you will learn new words that will help you expand your vocabulary. So, get comfortable, turn off the lights if you dare, and let's begin. Learn English through stories. It was almost midnight when Daniel's car broke down on a lonely road. The dark trees stood tall on both sides, their branches reaching out like bony fingers. He sighed, checking his phone, no signal. He had no choice but to find help. Just ahead, the outline of an old mansion stood against the moonlit sky. It looked abandoned, its windows dark and hollow. But right now it was his only hope. Daniel walked towards the mansion, his footsteps crunching on the gravel. As he reached the front door, he hesitated. Something about this place felt wrong. But the cold night air and the thought of waiting till morning made him push forward. He knocked once, twice. No answer. The door creaked open slightly. "Hello?" he called out, stepping inside. The air smelled of dust and old wood. A grand staircase stood in the center, its railing covered in cobwebs, spider's web. Candles lined the hallway, their flames flickering even though there was no wind. The silence was thick, pressing against his ears. He took a step forward, and the door slammed shut behind him. Daniel spun around, his heart pounding. He rushed back to the door, gripping the handle. It wouldn't budge, move even a little. His breath came in fast, shaky bursts. He was trapped. Then a whisper. It was soft, almost like a breath against his ear. "Leave while you still can." Daniel turned sharply, scanning the room. Nobody was there. He swallowed hard, tried to control the fear rising in his chest. "Hello? Is someone here?" his voice echoed. A sound came from upstairs. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, carefully planned. Each step creaked on the old wooden floor. Daniel clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay calm. "Maybe someone lives here," he whispered to himself, though he didn't believe it. He took a deep breath and moved toward the staircase. Each step groaned under his weight. As he reached the top, he saw a long hallway lined with doors. Some were slightly open, revealing dark rooms beyond. Then he saw her. A girl stood at the end of the hallway. Her long black hair covered most of her face, her dress torn and dirty. She didn't move, just stood there, staring at him through the strands of hair. Daniel felt ice spread through his veins. "Hey, do you live here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer. "I'm just looking for help. My car broke down," he said, taking a cautious step forward. The girl tilted her head slowly, her movements unnatural. Daniel stopped. The air grew colder. The candlelight flickered wildly. Then, without warning, the girl moved. Not walking, not running, but appearing closer in the blink of an eye. Her face still hidden, her breath ragged, harsh and uneven. Daniel stumbled back, his heart racing. "Stay away from me," he shouted. The girl let out a low, hollow laugh. It echoed through the hallway, sending chills down his spine. Then she vanished. Daniel stood frozen, his breathing heavy. This was wrong. This was impossible. He needed to get out. Suddenly, one of the doors creaked open beside him. Inside, the room was pitch black, but he could hear something breathing. Deep, slow breaths. Then a whisper, the same voice from before. "You shouldn't have come here." Daniel bolted, ran quickly, running back down the stairs. He reached the front door, yanking it with all his strength. It still wouldn't move. Panic rose inside him like a wave. A hand touched his shoulder. Cold, too cold to be human. He turned, his scream caught in his throat. The girl stood inches away, her face finally visible. Her eyes were hollow, black voids. Her mouth stretched into an unnatural grin, her skin pale and cracked. Daniel did the only thing he could. He ran, through the hallway, past the grand staircase, deeper into the house. The air grew heavier, as if the walls were closing in. Doors slammed shut behind him. Shadows moved along the walls, whispering his name. He turned a corner and stopped. A mirror stood before him, but the reflection wasn't his own. In the glass, he saw himself, but different. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, just like the girl's. Behind him, she stood, her hands reaching for him. Then, the glass cracked. The last thing Daniel heard before darkness swallowed him was his own scream. Daniel's scream echoed to the mansion, but no one was there to hear it. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then, the pieces on the floor began to move. They twitched and trembled, rearranging themselves into strange symbols Daniel couldn't understand. His reflection no longer existed. Instead, the glass showed nothing but darkness. Daniel stumbled backward, his breath coming in sharp gasps. His body felt strange, heavy, as if something unseen was pulling him down. His fingers trembled as he touched his face, making sure it was still his own. But something inside him whispered that it wasn't. A cold wind rushed past him, though the windows were shut. The whispers returned, growing louder, overlapping each other until they became unbearable. He clamped his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. The voices weren't just around him. They were inside him. Daniel! A voice called softly. His head snapped up. He turned slowly, dreading what he might see. The girl stood at the other end of the hallway, her head tilted, her hollow eyes locked onto him. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, shadows shifted, twisting into figures. Dozens of them, some tall, others hunched over, their bodies flickering like candle flames. Their faces were blurred, as if they didn't belong to this world. Yet, Daniel felt their eyes on him, watching, waiting. He took a step back, his foot crunching against the broken glass. The girl smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was twisted, full of something dark and ancient. "You're one of us now," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No, I am leaving. I'm not staying here." The girl let out a low, rattling laugh. The figures behind her moved closer, their distorted bodies stretching unnaturally. The air thickened, making it hard to breathe. Daniel turned and ran. He didn't care where he was going anymore. He just needed to get away. But no matter how many doors he passed, how many hallways he sprinted through, the house seemed endless. The walls shifted, twisting into new paths, leading him in circles. The whispers never stopped. Then, up ahead, he saw it, the front door. It was open. His heart leaped. He pushed himself forward, forcing his legs to move faster. The cold air from outside kissed his skin. He was almost there, just a few more steps. Then, something grabbed his ankle. He fell hard, his chin slamming against the wooden floor. Pain shot through his skull. He gasped, trying to pull himself forward, but the grip tightened. Ice-cold fingers wrapped around his leg, pulling him back into the darkness. He kicked, twisting desperately, his hands clawing at the floor. "No, let me go," he screamed. He looked back and froze. The girl was right there, her face inches from his. But now, her mouth was open wide, too wide, stretching impossibly as if she were about to swallow him whole. Her voice was inside his head, whispering the same words over and over. "You shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have." Daniel let out a strangled cry, mustering all his strength. He kicked one last time, breaking free from the icy grip. Without looking back, he lunged forward, diving through the open door. Cold night air hit him like a slap. He rolled onto gravel, gasping, his entire body trembling. He turned to look at the mansion, but the door was gone. The house stood silent, dark, as if it had never been open. No figures in the windows, no girl, no shadows. Just an empty, rotting house. Daniel scrambled to his feet, his heart still hammering. His car was still there, sitting uselessly in the road. But he didn't care. He just needed to get as far away as possible. He ran. The night swallowed him. But even as he left the house behind, one thing remained. The whisper, soft, almost gentle, floating in the wind. "See you soon, Daniel."